Kai, thank you so much for doing this. Welcome back to India. I know that the first time when you came to India, you were instrumental in installing these, automated binding lines in places like Shivakasi, etc. And now you've also visited quite a few book factories. You visited a book publishing warehouse, etc. What, according to you, is the shift that you're seeing on ground in the book ecosystem in India?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think the first thing that's worth mentioning from my perspective,
sure.
The first thing that strikes me coming back to India after 15 years is the speed of development.
Yeah.
I live in an environment where development has been rather static or non-existent in the past 15 years. And to see the breathtaking pace of development here, the first thing that strikes you is that there is development. Number two, I would say that as of today, at the top of the range, the printing operations that you see here are at top world level.
Sure.
And the top probably better than, say, the mid-range in places like Europe or North America.
Sure.
So where I would say, I saw operations where nothing was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And it would be hard to find fault with anything or indicated possible improvements. Then again, of course, also what's remarkable about India is the variety.
Yep.
So you would find top of the range operations here, and you would find very simple operations.
Yep.
Whereas again, at home, I would only be able to find a much narrower range. There would be some that are top, and then there would be some that are, let's say, not better than mediocre. But that's where it stops. It doesn't go all the way back to the beginning.
And what I also want to understand from you is what's happening to the printed book, in the sense that, during COVID, there was a sense that, books are going to vanish from the face. I remember this futurologist in Davos in 2008, and he made 4 predictions. Prediction number 1 was that oil will trade at $500 a barrel. North Africa is going to be the new Europe. Third is water will be available as a stock on the New York Stock Exchange. And the 4th prediction was the printed book is going to disappear.
Yes.
So 4 predictions. Out of that, I think North Africa being like Europe or trying to get close to that is the closest that he's come to. He failed on all 3.
Yes.
And definitely failed colossally on the printed book.
Yes.
So your sense of what is really transpiring with, the book, the humble book as we call it,
I think nothing of the kind is going to happen.
Correct.
The printed book is going to be with us.
Yep.
For a host of reasons. One I always cite as very important is the fact that the smartphone, the most popular medium used on a smartphone is video.
Yep.
The smartphone is video ready, and video drives out reading.
Yes.
Because it is so much easier. Video is, you do video in relaxation mode.
Yep.
When you're reading, you're definitely working, and you sense that. So I think we need the book because we have to read.
Yes.
There is a mode of information gathering that in order to understand complex society, you have to understand things that don't happen right here.
Sure.
And things that don't happen at the same time. And the only means of understanding, grasping, computing information that transcends time and space is by reading.
Sure.
The true interaction between forces that are, say, a continent apart or a century apart, which is important if you want to make sense of modern society.
Sure.
Is something that only the reader can do. The video consumer can't do it.
True.
And that's why the printed book is essential for a major part of our culture.
Sure.
And if we lose reading, we lose much more than the book. It's not a matter of transferring this to a reading device.
Sure.
As far as reading devices is concerned, and remember that when Amazon came with a Kindle and everyone said it's all going to the Kindle. No. I would say the typical Kindle consumer turned out to be those people that buy 20 books a year anyways.
Yes.
And they have their Kindles and they still buy 20 books a year.
Yep.
And a few on top in electronic format.
Yep.
So that part is not going to happen.
Yep.
And electronic media that are video focused cannot replace the book.
Yep.
Therefore, printed book is going to be with us forever. It is very economical.
Yep.
Its ecological footprint is in fact very good.
Yep.
I often use school books as a good example. If you look at a school year in a given subject, like English, say, you supply a class of pupils with a book.
Yep.
And you give them assignments to either read in the book or write on a piece of paper.
Yep.
You have far less carbon footprint than if you give them all tablet computers.
That's true.
And tell them to go on the internet to find their homework.
Yep.
And upload their homework on the internet and so forth.
Sure.
Your carbon footprint is disastrously worse than with print and paper.
Yep.
So no, that's going to be with us forever. And water won't be traded in the New York Stock Exchange, and oil won't cost $500 a barrel.
Well said. Yeah.
I wish Northern Africa all the best.
Yes.
And I believe possibly they will, and I truly hope that they will get to a development stage where they are an extension of Europe.
And have we, I mean, as a sort of human civilization, underestimated the book? I mean, after all, you know, when you look at the creation, 15th century, where, you know, when the book became what it did in the present form, you know, it's one of those inventions which is like the wheel, like the bicycle, like the shoelace, like the spectacle, one of those things which was once invented and here to stay. So what I again want to because you are an engineer, you formally, you are a book technocrat, while manufacturing this humble book, have we over-engineered it sometimes? Have we overcomplicated the process? Or is it just the dynamics of market forces which is, you know, determining a lot of things? Your take on that why is so much of emphasis being, laid down on how to produce the book today in the 21st century?
I think what has happened,
right,
and what I consider a challenge that we will have to overcome, is that we have forever developed productivity by building a new piece of equipment that does one unit operation much faster than the preceding generation of machine did. And such machines were, as a general rule, I would call it even an iron rule rather than a general rule, very expensive.
Yep.
So also we have to remember, for the past 50 years and a bit more, this has taken place against the backdrop of the world population tripling in a lifespan.
That's true.
This hasn't happened before. It will never happen again. Under these circumstances, gaining productivity by increasing volume was a viable strategy.
So
in future, it won't be that any longer. In the past, it was. So a new generation with higher productivity was centered on one particular piece of equipment that was very fast, very productive, but had to be run round the clock in order to be amortized.
Sure.
Which, for one thing, has resulted in those machines being much too polyvalent. So in other words, let's think of a certain size textbook or a certain size paperback trade book.
Yep.
You wouldn't have built a new print engine, if I may use that modern term from digital printing.
Sure.
You wouldn't dare build a print engine for this one product because you could not be sure, you certainly couldn't sell enough such machines to a user that could run them around the clock to amortize them.
Got it.
And I think this has gotten us into a vicious cycle. So there was always a fast-running monster in the middle of the process that was not easily linked and run in harmony with the rest of the process. It had to run very fast, and those machines came with a wide range of product capacities. and therefore we have increased productivity on condition that we were also able to concentrate more production on a given site.
Sure.
But we have not really made sufficient advances in the automation of the book manufacturing process.
Got it.
And I see that coming for the future.
Sure.
We are running out of population growth. Engineers will have to learn to increase productivity without increasing volume. And we will then begin to see more highly automated and more harmoniously flowing production process for the entire book.
Nice. So, which brings me to, we are here right now in Bangalore. We are at the Bindwell factory, and they are manufacturing some very interesting, post-press equipment. What I want to understand from you is what is the next sort of, the next rollout of binding lines going to look like in lieu of whatever you just shared with us? Are we going to see a different flavor to these machines? Are they going to be smaller? Are they going to be more nimble? Aspirationally very highly automated, but being able to do it with fewer components, fewer parts, fewer, processes involved in it, and in a way uncomplicating the process and simplifying it a little. Is that what is going to happen now?
Yeah, I would say let's one thing first is we go into development processes with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of ideas.
Of course.
We never quite know what we're going to come out with.
That's true.
Having said that, I hope that when we do reach the marketplace with a new development, we will be able to demonstrate exactly this, to say that this is a process that flows easily and is a lot easier to handle for the operators, and I would also say probably requires less manual labor.
Got it.
Simple, flowing, less manual labor, for which we will accept the fact that these new machines will no longer be new speed record holders or size record holders.
Okay. What I'm trying to understand from you, because obviously there is, 40 years of, thought process in this whole thing. So, for example, with the airline industry, you see, huge documentaries about how they're planning the next sort of generation of airlines. But then you begin to realize that they're doing that still on the assumption that aviation fuel is what is going to drive it, right? And then you realize that probably that is aviation fuel is something that they may run out of, and nobody is really planning ahead in the true sense of the term. But there is a possibility of creating a new generation of airline. Is there some such situation that's going to arise, in the book manufacturing process? Because maybe there's going to be a shift in material size, shift in processes, fewer, as you're mentioning, fewer human beings on the shop floor, etc. Is there going to be that kind of iteration that is required, that we are still thinking with one leg in the past as opposed to anticipating something for the future?
Yes. I believe it could go two ways.
Okay.
I have this one very positive vision for the book, and this is you could in fact start with a forest.
Okay.
We could create a sufficient area of completely sustainable forest.
Okay.
On our planet that would grow both the fuel for making the paper and the pulp for making the paper.
Right.
And you can do this in a sustainable fashion. If we were to say that, we want to provide the paper for all the Indian students and all the Indian consumers, from the textbook to the trade book, on Indian soil. It would be a reasonable proportion of Indian forestry and agriculture area that would have to be devoted, that would have to be dedicated to paper production, and it could sustainably produce both the energy and the pulp.
Got it.
And this would take care of this forever. Having said this might lead into another direction, and that is we might come to the conclusion that natural fibers are very suitable building and engineering materials for just more than what we use paper for today.
Got it. Yeah.
And that might lead us to a position that, say, raw materials that are today oil-based might then become natural fiber-based and go in competition with media paper, which would drive up the prices, and you would find a way also. But I don't really think. I mean, I would say I feel that this should be mentioned, that there can.
Right.
In reality, I believe that natural fiber can provide the energy and the raw material, definitely for the book industry, and probably for a bit more.
So another interesting thing was, when we had the fireside chat where you and Sadashiv Naik spoke. I mean, there were 2-3 concepts which you discussed at length. Number one was waste. And you was talking about 2 aspects to it. One is controlling it, and B is also following certain steps so that you ensure that, you don't unnecessarily create inefficiencies in the system. So again, if for, the benefit of our audience, if you can pinpoint that, A, what is the kind of process that is important to follow, and B, how to get into that habit.
Yes. Okay. I think this is in terms of printing.
Right.
There is one very graphic example, and that is if you build a printing site around a very, very powerful web machine or a couple of those. And I've seen installations like that. Now, investing in those has put the printing company in a situation where they have to amortize these presses. So whatever happens is they run round the clock. While running round the clock, they spit out paper, and you can't turn all that paper into books as soon as or as fast as the printing machines deliver it. So all that they first manage to do with it is to basically pelletize it and carry it away. And then it ends up somewhere. And invariably, what always happens, and you see, this is a good example. What happens is, let's say they're running a big job. Now remember, that is 2-dimensional. In book printing, a huge job can be many pages to the book, or many copies of the book.
That's true.
Many pages in the book is the worst offender. So now you're printing a title, you're printing a job. It takes a long time because it has many sheets, many sections, because of the number of pages. Now, the boss's best customer phones and wants something done first.
Right.
And this always happens. You stop this one job, and you print another job first.
Correct.
Then, after once you have stopped the presses, run another job. Then it doesn't even take the boss to squeeze in another 3 or 4.
Yes.
And when you finally end up terminating your big job, and you're moving these skids of paper into the post-press area, into the bindery area, no one can find the first few sheets. And that's what I mean by waste. So what have you created? Your press has churned out material wonderfully. It stands at 100% utilization, and you can be quite sure that also that is the one figure that they observe in the companies. They have 100% utilization of the press, but what have they done? They have printed 5 tons of paper, which they cannot find in their warehouse.
Got it.
And that's why, I mean, if you were designing from scratch today, you might not want that.
Right.
And one good idea or one approach could be a far less sophisticated press that you can afford to amortize a little less aggressively. Allow yourself some planning slack, and all this goes away. And so while you're maybe walking in slower steps, but you're getting to your objective a lot sooner. That's one good example. What I mean, where the way the technology developed, the way the technology advanced, created inefficiencies because the individual unit operations in the value chain don't go together.
Got it.
Yeah.
Also, is there a way to improve, say, for example, how signatures are kept on the factory floor, to ensure that when they go to the next stage, it doesn't ensure rejections and things like that? Is there some magic wand for those sort of things? Because that's one of the areas where we, in India at least, we find maximum amount of, shoddy work. Yeah.
I have toyed with that a lot during my career. Nothing's really worked very well. Only one thing works very well. That is, organize your production that the printed signatures don't sit for too long. I think that's the only advice. There is no magic wand for storing them in any other fashion. I have seen giant warehouses, completely robotized warehouses that tried this.
Yes.
It has all ended in tears. In that either it didn't work or it did work, but when you did the final calculation of the amortization, you found that this warehouse is much too expensive for what it does. You can theoretically do it. I would say my advice would be don't make 100% utilization of your most expensive piece of equipment a goal for your company.
Got it.
So rather than utilizing your most expensive piece of equipment 100%, make sure that your most expensive piece of equipment is not so expensive. So that you can afford going at less. And then make the average time spent by a printed piece of paper in your factory your key performance ratio. Let's say that, like, basically you don't want any printed sheet to hang around the printing factory longer than 36 hours.
Right.
And measure that and enforce that aggressively.
Sure.
Which you cannot do that without giving up the 100% utilization target first.
Got it.
But that would be my advice. Don't squander your fortune on the magic robotized warehouse. It's going to be, yes, you could make it work, but it will be way too expensive. And on the other hand, then once you have a comfort level with doing all this, you will end up storing too much of and it doesn't make you money.
That's true.
Paper makes money after you've handed it to the customer.
That's true. Just a follow-up question. I mean, what you said is absolutely fascinating, and you've obviously dealt with, thousands of book customers and had long conversations with them. But are they sensitized to this whole, divide between OPEX and CAPEX? I mean, and is there again a sort of formula which helps people do that calculation, broadly speaking?
That's interesting that you should say that, isn't it? Like, because I have never thought about it in those terms.
Okay.
But looking back on my experience of discussing with customers, that might indeed be where they had the problem. I'll give you one example. I was talking to one customer who wanted a dramatic retooling of his factory.
Right. Nice.
And they were they didn't have the funds for the investment.
Okay.
And a bank without a thorough understanding of the industry and the technology wouldn't finance them. So no bank would finance them, in other words. So I found financing solutions for them and then gave them a price in pennies per book.
Nice.
And yes, and oddly what happened was they had found, they said that they cannot finance because they don't have a bank, but they found that the amount of capital spent was okay.
Sure.
They did not like the pennies per book. However, those two figures were very closely related. So if you took your pencil and paper and reworked the capital investment into pennies per book, they were both the same. Which tells you that they were not sufficiently familiar with methods of like comparing one sort of expense to the other. But I would say the biggest problem is they were always fenced into a certain position, a certain way of doing something. And so like say, there would be a press that still had 5 years of life in it, and it just seemed too good on paper to run that full speed another 5 years. And any suggestion of organizing differently where that wasn't happening was too difficult.
Again, just a question, because you've had this sort of long, legacy which you inherited. Printing presses you find very often being changed, shifted, regularly upgraded. Somehow with binding lines that rarely happens. Once you invested in one of these beasts, rarely do you find people I mean, what is the reason for that? Is it just that they're manufactured better, or the replacement cost, or what is the rationale behind this kind of a thinking? Because I'm sure there are upgrades, there are things constantly happening in that space as well. So,
I would say initially when I first encountered this, I found this hard to believe.
Okay.
When I first started out as a young salesman of industrial bookbinding equipment, my older colleagues told me that, customers are focused on spending on presses, and the bindery is the poor cousin, and it doesn't get. I simply didn't believe it,
right?
But did find it to be true.
Yes.
And I think the reason is the individual presses are the biggest ticket items, and I think to be seen dealing with those is the safer way to promotion. And just for the reason that these are the big ticket items. This is what top management have on their mind. And working with those is a surer path to promotion. The bindery manager has a better chance of The bindery manager has a lesser chance of advancing to top management than the print shop manager. I think.
Interesting.
I believe that is why, as a general rule, investment into presses was made, and investment into post-press equipment was made as far as the press guys has left some money. Having said that, I can tell you of examples that went the other way.
Of course.
I mean, there have been. I have dealt with printing houses that have at a point in time decided we are going to retool the entire printing house and we'll start from the bindery. We'll have a state-of-the-art bindery and then build the press house, the press department
around that.
Nice. That has happened. But I don't think that it was 10%.
Oh, pretty low. One other interesting thing, and this has come up in a lot of the conversations you've been having over the last 3 days, is this word standards. So one is, of course, standardization, but also to have standard templates for books.
Yes.
So two things, really. One is, what do you mean by this? And two is, how do you expect this to roll out? And who drives this conversation? The publisher, the book print firms, the manufacturers, the machine manufacturers?
Yes. Okay. Where I'm coming from is, looking back on my career, I find that I would say again, and I call this an iron rule rather than a general rule.
Got it.
My customers have, on average, used 5% of the scope of different books and formats that the machines I sold them could have produced.
Right.
There's like quite regularly because that is what I had for sale. Let's be honest. That the machine would have produced anything from a credit card format to a huge atlas, and it ever only did a B and a royal or something like that. It happened again and again. Now, what comes first? Hen or egg? That's this question. This is what we had on offer. But I will also say, had we offered something more streamlined, it would not have been bought. I can't quite tell you why, but I think again it goes back to the presses. The huge, super fast, expensive presses had these wider ranges. And no one has ever wanted to start a bindery investment with a specification sheet. It was always, and you can see like within the competition, I would say all competitors had machines with the same format range. Because a competitor with a bigger format range would have immediately cornered the market. The customer would have fallen for it in droves. And that's why that never came about. So what I have in mind when I say standardization is basically that, which would be for printers to acknowledge that they are in a particular market. So they are not in the market for printing whatever can be printed. They are in the market for printing what they understand very well. And this will be a selective number of products. And it would be very reasonable to buy machines that are tailored for these specific products. And it would be very reasonable for machine manufacturers to cater for those needs. And that's what I have in mind when I say standardization. I think what I'm saying is not so much that I want you to sit down and standardize. I think what I'm saying is I want you to sit down and realize how standardized your business really is without you thinking of yourself being a standardized business.
No, got that. But for example, I mean, the other day we had the sort of face-to-face with the publishers, etc. And next morning for breakfast, I met one of the big giants. And so this conversation about standardization came up, and he said, do you know how many I have? So I said, yeah, maybe 15, 20. He said, no, 72 different templates for each of my book. I said, that's just too many. That's just too many. So again, my concern, then he said, but where do I start this conversation? I mean, how do I, because there are creators involved, there are book designers involved, then there is of course the fastidiousness of, a publishing director who wants something. So again, just bouncing the question back to you, how does one get this going? I mean, in principle, what you're saying makes absolute sense, but the trickle down on, the ground reality as it were.
Well, I think having the conversation along the value chain, the publisher, the printer, the machine manufacturer is a good first step. Secondly, I believe if I were to take a closer look at these 72 templates, I somehow feel I'm probably able to group them and say that, okay, these might be 72 templates as you see it. From a machine designer's point of view, I see 7 groups here. So we're down from 72 to 7. The other, and that's maybe a bit of a sore point also. It has to do with pricing transparency also. I would say wider variety of different formats does generate costs in the printers. But my observation is printers tend to mix it all into one pot and divide it evenly between their customers. Or maybe they pick and choose, and a good customer, a big customer, gets to have the specials done, and the others don't. But I have virtually never found publishers that were aware of the different costs of different sorts of books,
Yep.
which tells me they have never been told.
Yep. That's that. Again, yesterday you were kind enough to share some wonderful stories about your experience walking into bookstores, etc. And one of the things that came across in all the story is you examining the spine of a book, right? And I can understand why you're doing that. What is it that you're looking for? I mean, I really wanted to understand because the stories were wonderful. But what is it? I mean, it's obviously like a doctor examining a heart patient, but you're obviously looking for something. What is it that you're looking for? Because I suspect that, what your brain, whatever is picking out will be very, very beneficial. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, okay, the spine is where you most easily see if the book is right.
Correct.
Now, I think we'll have to be very careful here. We are not talking on a level where a typical consumer would consider this book defective.
Correct.
Or right. This is where we're on a totally different level. No, but
course.
It is in fact in the spine where you can see immediately whether this has been trimmed straight, cut straight without any nicks, and there's something else, by the way, and that is how under certain circumstances how precisely you can see with the naked eye, and there is and many designers do that, and in my opinion, you should never do it. But if you think of a book cover, and you think of a frame, so you have somehow in the book cover design there is a frame near the edges of the book. If you design like that, and now this is not quite rectangular, so in other words, the printed image is not like this. It's slightly skewed, or a little bit up, or a little bit down, or a little bit left, or a little bit misaligned. You can see 1/10 of a millimeter with the naked eye.
That's true.
And no one would. And I've done this with people. I said, you can see 1/10 of a millimeter with a naked eye.
Sure.
And they said no. I said, well, take a look at this. Are they the same? No, they're not. This is crooked.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, come here, get me my micrometer. And I was able to prove to them that there was a mere 1/10 of a millimeter.
Sure.
You can avoid the design, and then you don't have that problem.
Right.
And anyway, the other thing, and I think, okay, this is maybe another entertaining anecdote. Of course, what the experts always do is they take a stack of 5 or 6 books, they compare them, and they find fault if they're not exactly the same.
Yeah.
The consumer will only ever handle one of the same book, right?
Yeah.
And if you only ever handle one of the same book, more than 90% of the binding defects that we as experts have spent such a big part of our life discussing, they cannot be discerned, because you can only see it if you can compare at least 2 books.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Again, one of the interesting things that had emerged in your conversations that day was automation.
Yes.
Right. And now, again, this is, we sometimes have lines that come here and with a lot of fanfare, it's got all the bells and whistles. So 2 things happen after, the bosses have gone away. Most of the time, it's either switched off, or if it is functioning on the press, it's doing the wrong job. So, again, when you're saying automation for a book binding line, what do you sort of mean in terms of its translation, in terms of manufacturing a book? And again, what is actually needed and is commonsensical, is practical, is usable, and what is, as you call it, bells and whistles, which are, in a way, I mean, they're fancy stuff, they're very sexy, but it really doesn't add anything to the process.
Yes. Well, in terms of automation, what I would hope to see in the not too distant future is a book production facility where the transfer of the paper from the press into the bindery is automated or almost completely automated.
Got it.
I would say this would really be a step forward. And create a better process. And again, this takes us back to standardization. This will not happen unless we can start equipping printing factories for specific products.
Sure.
As I said, there's decades of development have gone into building the individual binding machines with this capacity.
Of course.
The automation experts, the like say internal transport experts, internal logistics experts, automation experts. If I tell them that, oh, and by the way, your format range is from credit card to Atlas, they won't even talk to me.
That's
I mean, if I can't be reasonable there, and for example, say that it would be nice if your device handled 5 millimeters plus minus A4 or something like that.
Sure.
For all, and maybe even let it be A4 and A5. Just to give you that example. That's when I can get them talking. And when we can bring them to the table and then take it to the next level.
Sure.
Whereas again, many of the other features on the machines, they were fun to build. they were fun to demo
That's right.
at the shows. In day-to-day practice, they could sometimes even be counterproductive.
Sure.
Because you don't really need that last tenth of a millimeter. There's a clear idea. The naked eye is the concept, the yardstick for a book. If it looks flawless to the naked eye, is good. And good is good. And by putting a computer onto that machine where, I can then fiddle another tenth of a millimeter with a spine notcher or something.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily doing my customer a favor.
Yeah. But unfortunately, we live in a world where people are happier having that computer screen and touch screen and entering all kinds of numbers as opposed to the, looking at the glue tank and the side glue tank, etc. Is that again a dichotomy? We are putting emphasis probably not necessarily on the correct things.
I've seen different movements here. I have had customers buy a more expensive machine with a computer screen human interface.
Yes,
because they said young people will accept this job if they feel they're handling a computer.
Nice.
So we had that. I think that is no longer the case.
Right.
I think today we have another generation of school leavers. And they won't be so easily ensnared into an imagination that they're running a computer. Today, they have all had computers in their nursery.
Right.
So they will no longer be overly fascinated by a computer. And they will tell the difference. Are they handling a computer or are they handling a binding machine? So I think that may be a period that is that is behind us. And I believe, and I think we'll have to deal with that. Personnel, skilled labor will be at a premium.
Yes.
Will all have to be trained. And for someone you lose, you will have to train someone. And to have a training process, to have a machine with a training process that is more straightforward and easier, I think that's what we're looking for in the future. And as I said, also making standards more enforceable. That's also the present generation of machines. They give you the opportunity to, let's say, change parameters very comfortably, very subtly, and very discreetly.
That is true.
And then you build a management information system on top
of that
will raise an alert, and a day later you can see in your office that the operator has changed the machine.
Yes.
I have an easier solution, and that is make a machine with an on and off button that will always make the book in the way you want it made.
Got it.
And
Got it.
And then you can save the whole management information system to boot.
Got it. So has it become much more difficult for a sort of youngish person working on a book factory in terms of constantly rethinking and, re-equipping himself or herself on the shop floor that, new trends, new process, some new grade of adhesive that has come, new demand, turnaround times? Is the world in that sense, moving so much faster, therefore demands, and therefore additional pressure on that poor person who's managing the machine? Have you seen that kind of thing?
Yes. Like the simple fact that machines have gotten a lot more expensive over the years. And there is substantial responsibility.
Sure.
And again, that's the other thing. A more expensive, more complex machine will break more easily. And will break badly, will break more expensively.
That's true.
And that's on the poor operator's shoulders.
Right.
That's one example. I would say one of the is an observation in Germany. It is very difficult for young people to see their development potential in a bindery environment. If 10 years ago you started as a bindery apprentice in an industrial bindery in Germany and you have stayed the course, today you have a skill set with I would say someone with 10 years of education at school and then changed into a traineeship. If you had the wisdom 10 years ago to go into an industrial bindery, complete the apprenticeship, complete all training, and stay the course, you will make substantially more money today than someone who went into the automobile industry.
Right.
Now, what's the percentage of young Germans that would have chosen the bindery over the automobile industry 10 years ago? It's a fraction. They were still. And remember, there are
in spite of this huge tradition, Leipzig and
of course, yes. But
my God,
and then also there are a few things. There's dust in a bindery. There's noise in a bindery. So it's easy to see why you don't want to work there. And it's for young persons, it's difficult to explain why it can be very interesting.
We are here at the Bindwell factory. You've been brainstorming with the team. I think you have a couple of the sessions. Also curious to know what is sort of the mentoring that you're doing, because the dynamics is different, the habits are different. So in that sense, what are you doing and what should we expect?
I think in very general terms, what I feel my mission is here.
Yes.
What I'm trying to do is, this is a huge country, with an enormous talent pool. And all I'm doing here is, I would say, in terms of telling people that don't make that your go-to, your default solution to problems. Don't say that in this country we can solve these problems because they're complex and we have plenty of people to eat through the complexity. No, say that we have a huge talent pool here and we will use that talent to think about the complexity and find intelligent ways. Use the talent pool to find intelligent ways of resolving complexity. Don't use the talent pool in terms of quantity by just furiously chipping away at the complexity.
Got it.
I think if I can manage to make that understood, that can be very helpful.
And a few months from now, we have Drupa. Are there going to be sort of announcements that you would have, surprises, specifically for the European, North African markets in terms of, a good, robust, made-in-India product which, can surprise bookbinders across the world?
Yes, I believe so.
Right.
We've had a bit of a dry run at the Interpack exhibition.
Of course,
which was last year in June. And one thing that's going to happen is we haven't had a Drupa show since 2016.
That's true.
So this is it's going to be
7
a
years.
long time. The interested public coming to see Drupa has an idea of an Indian machine manufacturer
Yep.
that dates back to 2016.
Yep. Yep.
So definitely the first announcement to the interested public will be that we look rather differently today.
Sure.
And our capabilities look quite different today. So I think that's the first announcement that's going to be there.
Sure.
And from there on in, we'll hope. I think it will have to reverberate with the visitors. We will display solutions that won't simply say that we can do that more easily in India because we have the numbers.
Yep. Yep.
We will say this is an idea we have brought from a very varied, very dynamic new market, and take a look if you like it.
Yep. Yep.
And I think if that message passes to the visitors and catches on, then it will already be a runaway success.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I have 2 or 3 more questions. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's very interesting because formally, of course, you're an engineer and, you, of course, were the man responsible for the entire, Kolbus success around the world. But in addition, what came as a big surprise is, of course, your sense of humor, but more importantly, also a kind of, cultural anthropologist about the printing industry. So before we sort of, let you go, very interesting what you were tracing yesterday in terms of what happened in, Leipzig as being the epicenter of, and then of course, the 2 major binderies that came into place, and then of course what happens in Hamburg, what happens in the border, between the 2 nation states. If you can share that, because that's fascinating history, and also I think there are lessons to learn from that, more importantly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like one after the other.
Yes, of course.
And I remember, I am not old enough to have been part of that. I learned that. I learned that from people masters that lived through that area when I was a very young man.
We are going back to post World War
late 1940s. After the war, after the partition of Germany,
of course,
the West had lost Leipzig, and Leipzig had been the center of printing and book production in Germany, and they were, for a while, they were truly convinced they could no longer make good books in Germany because they had lost Leipzig. Which, looking back, that seems amusing. I mean, in the end, it turned out it was quite possible to still publish books and to still print them well. The one story. The second that you're indicating was about, and as I said, this is fed through into perfect binding technology, and until this day. This received a development push because in times of scarcity in Germany, a publisher had the idea of printing on a newspaper web at daytime and on the same paper to make it as easy as possible. Newsprint and print a book in the day shift.
Yes.
And when that turned out to be possible, so now they were obviously sitting on a chance of making very, very low priced books. Now they needed a way of turning this into a very simple paperback book. And this is how perfect binding initially developed. That means the challenge put to the engineers was, find us a system to make these books very cheaply. That's what they went for, and that's what they achieved. And having achieved that, that is basically where the fundamental development stopped. And so this is what it, and you still find that.
There was this catchy thing to describe the paperback. I mean, there was this.
Oh yeah, they cut this the famous Rowohls Rotationsroman.
That's right. Yeah.
The Ro.
Yeah.
The brand is today the brand is much more famous than the technology.
Yeah.
So any well-read person in Germany will have heard of the Ro. No one will remember the story.
That's right.
And that's and that's what it was. And I think we you see that in the history of perfect binder development.
Yeah.
There was somehow this threshold of the minimum viable product.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then in subsequent years it was tinkered with, but it was never really substantially altered.
Sure. Got that. And a couple of more questions. One is, of course, the role you played at the VDMA, and I'm also alluding to that because, I mean, here the industry is, is propelling, it's moving forward. But two things. One is we don't have as formidable a body as VDMA, which is, of course, talking to the stakeholders within the industry, talking to the governments, which I think VDMA very successfully managed to do, lobbied for the industry, got certain, benefits, etc. And third was, of course, the kind of training programs that it had. So it also, I think, spread awareness about, what was happening in the front end of technology development among, various people. So again, what was the reason why VDMA was successful? And again, any learnings that we or some of our trade bodies can pick up?
Yeah. I think with the it was successful when there was a clear understanding among the various players in the industry that they had a common product and service offering to promote. So let's say German print and paper technology was considered something that they needed to promote together. And that which, for example, led to the first Drupa show. I would say that this is a long time ago.
Yes.
It started in 1951.
Yep.
And but this is one example to and see this is not as straightforward as it may appear because you have stronger manufacturers and smaller manufacturers. And the stronger manufacturers might think rather than investing into a show that is going to reflect well onto my competitors also, that is going to help startups that might compete with us in later years. Why don't I do an open house and keep it all to myself? Right? So it's not necessarily a given that companies do that. So I think that getting together as a group and say, we will pool our resources and promote German print and paper technology together. I think that was the mission. That was the mission. That was the recipe for success. In terms of training, I am not so sure. I would say that there was very laudable effort.
Yes.
There is a huge number of printers worldwide that have had their part of their initial training as course participants. With VDMA sponsored printing courses. And I think and that had its time. But again, that has changed. Let's say if you go back to say the 1960s or the 1970s, it was possible to arrange an offset printing course for Indian printers that would make a difference in the country, because then a bit later their employers would invest and a few presses would come into the country that would find trained operators and it would be a step forward. I think today we are way beyond that, and you can know India is so vast, but even let's say more normal sized countries, today I would say it would be very difficult to make a difference by organizing a printing course. On the other hand, I believe it would still be valuable to educate and to inform. And I hope that ways will be found to do that.
So Kai, we're going to end the Q&A with some fun questions for you. So we have to test your your quickness and also whether you have a sense of humor or no. All right. So paperback or hardcover?
I'll have to admit I like paperback from a technical and from an aesthetic point of view, but hardcover is a lucrative product.
Okay. Bestseller or Nobel Prize?
Bestseller.
Okay.
And I'll a very quick answer for that. Bestseller is a gauge that is fair. Nobel Prize is not.
Okay. Leipzig or Frankfurt? I'm not the cities, the book fair.
The book fair's Leipzig.
Got it. Drupa, Interpack. This is a tough one for you.
It is indeed. It would still be Drupa.
Okay. Okay. EVA or PUR?
EVA for simplicity.
Got it. Meeting a customer or meeting an engineer?
Meeting a customer. I would say I was among those that always strove to get out of the factory and see the customer.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. And the reason for that is business or also, stuff that...
Yeah, I think it's something that you were born with.
Yeah.
Although I would also say I was probably always a mixture of both.
Yeah.
I would say I felt equally at ease outside with the customer, which was my preferred place to be.
Sure.
But I felt good within the factory too.
Got it. Gutenberg, Sennefelder?
That would have to be Gutenberg for revolutionary impact. Yes. Sir.
All right. All right. Inline, offline?
Inline enforces better production habits.
Okay.
So don't make it a religion. But
nice.
Thinking online is a good idea because it enforces a certain discipline that will help.
Got it. Hardcover line or casemakers?
Let me put it like this: you can start a business with a casemaker. We had a 60-year-old Kolbus casemaker in our lobby at Kolbus.
Okay.
Which looked like a very simple machine compared to what we had on offer and what we had in the showroom.
Sure.
And I remember always telling people then, oh, by the way, when this was marketed in 1953,
sure.
This was the basis of a business. You could buy this and start a business. So, and I think you can. With a casemaker, you have a business.
Yeah. Even today, is that hold true? That
I think yes. You could still do that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Quality control or make ready?
That's very intertwined. Very precise quality control. Be very sure what your quality control is.
Sure.
And it will feed through into faster make ready.
Got it. Very good answer. Weight checkers or signature monitoring?
I think it will be. A couple of years ago, I would have said weight checkers.
Okay.
For reasons that I don't want to go into
sure.
now.
Sure.
I think recognition systems will be the future.
Sure. Sure. Maplet or art paper?
Art paper.
Right.
Yeah.
German metallurgy, Japanese electronics.
I would say German metallurgy is more. You can do more surprising things with that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll buy that. Okay. One great tip that you got from a customer.
One great tip that I got from a customer was to always think of how fantastic a relationship with a customer you can build around something that doesn't work.
Yeah.
To put it simply, if what you give your customers always works, that also has this. It also has this flavor that you are always right.
Sure.
And the customer can never be wrong. if you want to find why your most loyal customers are your most loyal customers, it very often goes back to a moment when something didn't work.
Yeah.
And how you dealt with that situation. And I was told that by a customer when I was very young.
Okay.
And I think it's helped me a lot over the years.
Sure. And you're obviously in a few days flying back to, homeland, so to speak. And supposing perchance in the business class, you are seated next to the Indian finance minister and she asks you what you do and, you get talking about the book industry. Is there one thing you'd like to tell her about the book industry where, they can introduce as policy, that is the Indian government, and that's something that could benefit the ecosystem that you've seen here? One suggestion that you would have for the government?
Yes, I think what I would say is look at the book industry as part of the entire Indian media industry as a whole.
Yeah.
That is the media industry all the way from the book to Bollywood.
Sure.
As the Indian government, be aware that this is, or certainly is going to be, a global powerhouse, and it will need free trade. When you think of your media industry, of which the book industry is part, it is powerful on a global level, and it will benefit from free trade. So.
Yep.
Make sure you keep world markets open for your media industry, including books, and make sure you don't do anything that might have repercussions on free trade for this industry. That would be the one advice I'd have.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for doing this. I have been listening very carefully to everything you've been saying over the past 3 to 4 days.
Yeah.
Learned a hell of a lot, and I hope to continue learning. I hope many people see this interview and this little masterclass that you delivered. This is just 1% of what he knows. He's like a book, and I hope he, keeps coming back to India and sharing. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Danke.
Yeah.
Danke.
Yeah.